What is going on, guys? UFC 320 going down this weekend. One of the best cards of the year, potentially. It's a great card, guys, but there is a sad reality that comes with it. And we're hoping this is not the reality, but we're going to be looking at the absolute worst case scenario for UFC 320 this weekend. The worst series of events to possibly play out, man. Let's go ahead and get into it. Starting off first, man. I'm going to be honest. I think we all, as an MMA community, can collectively agree that the worst case scenario for the main event, Magomed Ankalaev versus Alex Pereira, would be for Magomed Ankalaev to win, and not just to win. Okay, I want to say that if he wins a competitive fight, it's not the end of the world. However, if Magomed Ankalaev goes out there and sleeps Alex Pereira, yes, knocks him out cold, puts him unconscious, this is the worst possible case scenario. Not because I hate Magomed Ankalaev or he's just this super boring fighter or, virus to the sport. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying. But we do live in a world where Magomed Ankalaev beating Alex Pereira could potentially lead Alex Pereira into retirement. If he knocks him out, if he chins Alex Pereira, guys, y'all got to understand, Poatan is 38, maybe 37 years old. If he comes off a brutal knockout loss to Magomed Ankalaev, first of all, he's going to be on a 2-fight losing streak. He's not getting any younger. He's coming off a bad KO potentially. What else does he do? Like, are we living in a world where Alex Pereira fights a contender at 205? I don't think so. He's made it clear. We all know he's on the back end of his career. If he gets knocked out, guys, again, I'm going to post my UFC 320 predictions later in the week. But if Pereira does get chinned, and it's very possible, by the way, if Pereira gets chinned, this could be the last time we see him. At least it's going to be the last time we will see him at 205. There is still potential. Alex Pereira could move up to heavyweight, challenge Tom Aspinall, or whoever the champion is. I'm guessing it's still going to be Tom Aspinall by that time. But guys, this is a terrible situation because if Ankalaev does knock out Pereira, he's going to take some time off. And even if he does come back and fight at the heavyweight division, we're not going to see him until maybe the middle of next year. He's going to have to take time to recover his chin. He's also going to have to take time to develop his body to get, natural at the heavyweight division. So this is the worst possible case scenario. Not necessarily just that Magomed wins, but that he finishes and really knocks out Alex Pereira. Okay, guys? And honestly, I'm going to give y'all a quick spoiler, a quick look into the future of what I'm going to pick for this card. I'm picking Magomed Ankalaev to knock out Alex Pereira. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that it's the other way around. The best case scenario for UFC 320 would be that Alex Pereira knocks out Magomed Ankalaev because that could potentially either set up a trilogy, which could be a banger, could have a lot of hype behind it, or maybe then Alex just moves up to heavyweight. Maybe Alex defends against Roundtree or Yuri again. I don't know. There's a bunch of better possibilities if Alex were to win. And on the other hand, if Magomed wins, I mean, maybe he fights Yuri Prochazka. I think that's the best option out of those. But, we'll get to that later, okay? We'll get to more of that later. I don't want to spoil it. But Magomed Ankalaev winning, realistically, even if you're Alex, or even if you're a Magomed Ankalaev fan, even if you're a hardcore Big Ank fan, from the UFC's perspective, from the MMA community, Alex Pereira winning this fight would be better for the sport, okay? Let's go ahead and move on to the co-main. Yes, guys, the worst possible case scenario for the co-main event, the worst outcome. In my opinion, again, feel free to disagree with me in the comments, but in my personal opinion, it is just that Corey Sandhagen wins the fight. Okay? I understand Corey Sandhagen is a very likable guy. I love Corey Sandhagen. It would be cool if he pulls off the upset. However, I need y'all to listen and hear me out where I'm coming from here. Okay? If Corey Sandhagen wins and beats Merab Dvalishvili, what is the UFC going to do with Merab? Because I'm going to be honest, although Merab's a great champion, he's very, very dominant. If Corey Sandhagen does beat Merab Dvalishvili, I don't think the UFC is going to book a rematch. Unless it's just this barn burner of a fight. The UFC, maybe not so much now, but they have not loved Merab in the past based on, some people forget this, some people do tend to forget this, but him and Aljamain Sterling refused to fight each other, which rightfully so, they're like best friends. But also, Merab was given possibly the hardest path to the UFC title in history. And the UFC also fed him to Umar Nurmagomedov with the hopes that Umar would knock off Merab. It didn't happen that way. But if Corey Sandhagen beats Merab Dvalishvili, we're stuck in a loop. We're stuck in a loop in the bantamweight division because I don't think Dana White's going to give Merab an immediate rematch. Maybe he does. That is possible, but I don't think it's going to happen because you got Petr Yan, who's sitting there. You've got Umar Nurmagomedov, that's probably only one fight away for fighting for the belt again. The UFC wants Umar in the title picture. They've made that very clear. So, if Corey Sandhagen beats Merab Dvalishvili, I think this is the worst possible outcome because I think the title is going to get passed around. Yes, guys, if Corey Sandhagen beats Merab, and let's just assume that the UFC and Dana White does not give Merab an immediate rematch, we're going to see Corey Sandhagen versus Petr Yan, the rematch. Great fight, don't get me wrong. I would be excited for the fight, but I'm going to be honest. I would be picking Petr Yan in the fight. I would pick Petr Yan to win that fight. And then, what happens next if Petr Yan defeats Corey Sandhagen? Then do we get Yan versus Merab? Do we get Yan versus O'Malley too? That would be sick. Or do we get Yan versus Umar? I'm going to be honest. Those are sick fights, don't get me wrong. But if Yan, I do think Yan would beat Corey Sandhagen. But if Corey Sandhagen wins the belt, then Yan wins it off of him. Yan's probably losing his first title defense. So we would have the title change hands in 3 straight fights. That's what I'm getting at, okay? That's why this is the worst possible case scenario. I understand if you disagree because, the title switching hands could be cool. It's interesting. However, I'm not under that opinion. I don't really know why, but I always prefer a dominant champion rather than somebody winning the belt and immediately losing it in the next fight. I think it just brings more stabilization to the division, okay? So the worst possible scenario is for Corey Sandhagen, honestly, to finish Merab. If it's a banger fight, like fight of the year contender, they probably will just book the rematch. But Corey Sandhagen winning the title, unfortunately, it's not best for the UFC because on the other hand, if Merab does win, you've got Merab versus Yan probably even in December. And then probably Merab versus Umar, which would be a very anticipated rematch, by the way. So I just think there's better options if Merab wins. Not stylistic matchups-wise, but based on the stability of the division. Okay, guys? Let's go ahead and move on. Again, y'all can disagree with me in the comments, but for the third and final worst outcome, guys, I hope all 3 of these don't happen. If one of them happens, I can live with it, but if all 3 of these are to happen, I don't know if I can live with it, guys, okay? But the third option, the third nightmare scenario is that Yuri Prochazka loses. Now, maybe I'm a bit biased because Yuri Prochazka is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. But guys, I can't go through this again. I cannot see this visual right here again. Yuri Prochazka getting knocked out, man, it didn't sit right with me. And I had to see it twice. I had to see it twice in the UFC, both at the hands of Alex Pereira. But if Yuri Prochazka loses, this is a case of not so much that Khalil Roundtree winning would be the worst, would be the bad part, but more of the fact that if Yuri Prochazka were to lose, what would he do? What would the UFC do with Yuri Prochazka? Because if he loses to Khalil, he'll be 1-1 in his last 2 because he's on a 1-fight win streak over Jamal Hill, which that win hasn't necessarily aged the best. But if Yuri loses to Khalil Roundtree, are we looking at Yuri Prochazka versus Dominic Reyes too? I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing with this guy? Because if he loses to Khalil Roundtree, we're probably going to get Khalil Roundtree versus Carlos Ulberg, maybe. Or if Ankalaev wins, maybe we'll just do Ulberg versus Big Ank. And I'm going to be honest, that fight is not selling no pay-per-views. A good thing the UFC is getting rid of the pay-per-view model because Ulberg versus Ankalaev, that's not a good main event, bro. From an entertainment standpoint, an entertainment business, which is the UFC, Ulberg versus Ankalaev is not getting eyes to the sport. No, it's not. Maybe Ankalaev versus Roundtree is better, but even then, it's not great. On the other hand, if we get Ankalaev versus Yuri Prochazka, that's a much better option. I'm just being real. Yuri versus Ankalaev is a much better fight stylistically and bringing eyes to the sport. People know who Yuri Prochazka is. He's not, the most well-known fighter in the sport, but the casuals know who this guy is. The last samurai, the Chechnyan samurai, okay? Yuri Prochazka cannot lose this weekend. He cannot lose. If he beats Khalil Roundtree, Yuri Prochazka will be next for the title. If Ankalaev beats Pereira, we're getting Big Ank versus Yuri, which is a very cool matchup. If Pereira beats Ankalaev, on the other hand, I'm guessing they're going to run the trilogy, unless Pereira moves up to heavyweight, which is also a possibility. But if Yuri Prochazka wins, it's better for the sport because we can either get Yuri versus Ankalaev for the belt, or if they run the trilogy, Yuri is going to be fighting Carlos Ulberg for a true #1 contenders fight. And this is a win-win because I do believe Yuri Prochazka would be the #1 contender and also knock off the boring contender that is Carlos Ulberg. And Yuri Prochazka is going to be the #1 contender, guys. He's going to be waiting to fight the winner of Ankalaev Pereira, and he's going to win the belt, man. Yuri Prochazka, checkmate, is going to win the belt, guys. Okay, this is what we need. We do not need Khalil Roundtree beating Yuri. I'm sorry to all the Khalil fans out there. I'm not one of them, okay? I'm going with Yuri Prochazka. But yes, guys, if Khalil Roundtree wins, it's not the end of the world as long as he doesn't chin my Pookie princess, Yuri Prochazka. But at the same time, if you want Khalil Roundtree to win, Khalil Roundtree versus Magomed Ankalaev is not a very entertaining stylistic matchup, in my opinion. I don't think it is. Same thing with Khalil versus Ulberg. It's just not. It's boring. Okay? Yuri Prochazka and boring don't belong in the same sentence together ever, okay? Yuri Prochazka needs to stay in the win column for the betterment of the UFC, for the entertainment aspect of the sport, and for the hearts of MMA fans around the world. Okay, guys, so this is the worst possible case scenario for UFC 320. Yuri Prochazka to lose, Corey Sandhagen to beat Merab, which it would be cool. I'm not going to be sad or butthurt about this, but in terms of the whole UFC's perspective, they want Merab to keep winning, okay? Because let's be honest, Corey Sandhagen's cool. You know, he's nerdy and all this stuff, real relatable. He's not a big star. Merab wasn't a big star either when he won the belt, but he's kind of transcended into a star. Corey Sandhagen does not have that potential, okay? And obviously, the worst possible outcome would be Magomed Ankalaev to knock out Alex Pereira because there's potential. That could be the last visual of Alex Poatan Pereira that we ever see in the UFC, guys. And we don't want that, okay? We are all rooting for Alex Pereira. Is he going to win? I don't think so. Very, very possible. But we're all rooting for Chama, man. Hopefully he can get it done. Like I said, I'll post my predictions later this week, guys. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn the post notifications on. We're going to be streaming for the UFC press conference for UFC 320, guys, so you don't want to miss out. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we out.